Welcome, everyone, to episode 391 of Just Joshing. I'm your host, Joshua Pentalaresco. I write stuff in podcast 2. Marcio Catalano Part 2 is upon us. This is a really cool part of the conversation for me because this shows you how things lead to each other very well. What does stripping have in common, whether it's male or female, and how that commonality led Marcio to voice what he voices today. And we have a really fun chat about that. So let's just get to it, shall we?
This episode of Just Joshing is sponsored by Indie Imprint. Indie Imprint supports creators by creators. Whether you are writing a book or creating a video game, Indie Imprint works with its clients to produce, edit, and present their projects to the world. For more information, check out their website at www.indieimprint.com.
There's a lot of places for men. There's not a lot of places for women for that kind of outlet, so to speak. So, does that make sense?
No, it totally does. Actually, I was going to add one small thing. My experience is dating women. I find that going after what they fantasize about has gotten me far more results than anything else. Because honestly, I think for the majority of women I've been with, it's all about what's in their head. It's not so much what you have, it's what's in their head. And I have found that, I find that and it doesn't shock me that the industry you're talking about, it works pretty much the same way. Where there's both stripping parts have in common is you are selling a fantasy. But it's how the fantasy, right? It's what part of the fantasy.
Are you saying that stripping sells a fantasy and then entertainment sells a fantasy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, there is totally, but it makes sense, right? It's not, but everybody gets that result differently, and what caters to me may not cater to somebody of the opposite sex, and
sure, it's a taste, just like cuisine.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly, and because there isn't a lot of service provided for the opposites, for the female, it's not something really thought about in that way by a lot of people. But no, it's true. It's you're catering to a need or to a client base, right? And what they want is they don't want just flesh. I mean, we're easier to please, I think, as a general rule of thumb. Hey,
we men compartmentalize things.
Yeah.
So we can bring mechanical nuts and bolts about things where I think women in general, and this is a compliment, they're more in tune with all the nuances of things, the sensitivity to kindness and attention and a connection that we, and I'm not saying men are not human, because we are, but we can sometimes
it's not always
disconnect from, separate from.
It's not always
we can justify things a little bit differently.
It's not the first thing we look for generally. I'll be honest. I mean, when I look at a girl, I look how hot she is. It's usually one of the first things I do look at. It's not the only thing I look at. I mean, that will only entertain me for so long.
Yeah, sure.
But
everybody's a human being. You notice what you see. And anybody who says otherwise is lying, because in reality, if someone is in front of you, you're going to notice, and what you're going to notice is going to be your opinion. I like or I don't like. It's
absolutely. And
that leads to the conversation. That leads to whether you want to get to know someone.
Absolutely.
So,
fair. That's just me being honest. Like, no, like I said, man. I mean, kudos to you.
Let's sum up stripping, because it's probably the most boring aspect.
No, it is. Actually, the only thing I was going to say is, I mean, you made a career out of it, and you were very successful. Kudos to you.
I'll tell you. I'll give you a little, a small 2-minute rant about stripping and what it means to me and what I got out of it.
Yep.
I never intended to do it. I don't think anybody can plan on that career.
No.
Right? It's got to be an accident. It happened because one day I had been driving by the airport in Seattle, SeaTac, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, and there was always a club there with a specific billboard with running lights around it. Now, ironically, as a kid, my dad used to always go up to the airport. We'd watch the planes take off. This is something he liked to do. And as a child, I had seen that sign a zillion times. How creepy is this? later on one day, they had some, help wanted thing there, and I didn't grow up. I grew up pretty poor, and I had seen it, and okay, maybe I can leave this stupid telemarketing job that I'm doing at the time to hop over to do something that might be cool, like a bartender or a waiter job, right? That's an upgrade, and I get tips. That's my thinking, 21-year-old kid, right? And I go in, and lo and behold, whoa, what is this? And here's what we're looking for. We're looking for guys that are good looking and have a certain physique, and the owners took a liking to me, and why don't you come on in for a few weeks and watch the show and see what you think? And if you want to audition, and back then what they do is, if a dancer was going to get into it, they'd throw you up. They might have you work as a waiter or someone selling raffles, and then they would announce, like, ladies, we've got this new guy, he's going to be trying out, this is audition, so based off your audition, you'd sink or swim. And so they gave me a chance to come in and watch these guys that were part of the show, and it became very intriguing to me. And the first thing that dawned on me is this. Two things. I'll be totally honest. Number one, I'm fucking broke. Okay? Everybody gets that. Number two, I had wanted to go to acting school, and I didn't have the money. And I saw these guys on stage that were performing. They were doing, in my opinion, they were actors. They were doing theater. They had costumes. There was music that was thematic with samples. I mean, this is full-grown shows that were edited. They weren't like song after song after song. Guys would come out in monster outfits, and there'd be samples from, oh, you're not gonna get me now, Cobra, things like this. And it was incredible because it's not something you can imagine till you see it. And I said, you know what? This is a chance to get on stage. This is a chance to get in front of an audience. And what's lovely about an audience is you're living in reality because they either like it or they don't. And you can't hide from it.
That's true.
There's an energy in the room. And every audience is different.
Yeah.
And I thought, my God, this could be an opportunity for me not only to make some money, and at the time, it was just Friday and Saturday night, so it was a part-time gig. So I thought, this is additional income. And you know what? I get to perform. And I had been looking for that my whole life. I wanted to be on stage. I didn't want to be on stage because I wanted fame or I wanted attention. I wanted to explore what was in my soul, my mind, that I wanted to try. I wanted to experiment. And I wanted to see what the result of that idea was. And I think that's what all artists look for is, art comes from a place of, it's human expression. This is my humanity. This is my perspective. This is how I see the world. I want to put this out here and see if someone else agrees or if they feel the same way. I think that's where it stems from. And for me, it was that. And I came in and I started working there. And one thing led to another. And 15 years later, by the time I was 35, I'd had a 15-year career. I'd owned 2 groups. I'd owned 1 agency. I employed 150 entertainers at one point across 4 states. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Northern California, San Francisco. Some of the dancers I had worked with in my agency were colleagues. Suddenly, overnight, I bought the company. I was the boss. And that, that's a whole different thing. It changes the dynamic of the relationship because you go from being a colleague complaining about the same stuff to being a producer or an agent that's running the 70 hours a week in the office booking talent and talking to clients. And so now, it colors the relationship a bit. But for me, what stripping was, and for a long period of time, I didn't want to talk about it because there's the fear that people will misunderstand it. Because the common perspective, and I got this a lot, was, oh, you do that. And people equate it to pornography. Right? People do. Mm-hmm. People like, oh, you do that for a living. Don't you have any respect for yourself? Don't you feel degraded? And I thought, you can work an office job and feel degraded. Mm-hmm. Are you kidding me? I'm fucking working Friday and Saturday nights. I'm coming home with duffel bags of money. My mom's helping me count this stuff because I don't have time. Right? right? I'll drop off a duffel bag, ask my mom to help, right? Because it's a lot, right? And I'm making more than my parents did migrating to America, working 8 to 10 days a month, part-time for 4 or 5 hours. And I'm meeting, a young man, I'm meeting beautiful girls, right? And people are having a great time. They're partying, they're drinking, they're laughing. The guys, we have a camaraderie, we're brothers. It's like, are you kidding? And I'm working on my body. I'm taking care of myself. I'm healthy. I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my life. I'm in great shape. I'm traveling. You want me to feel bad?
Hell no.
You should feel bad for trying to make me feel bad because you sound ridiculous, right? And it was this thing. And what it gave me was, I'll tell you what it gave me. It gave me confidence. It gave me self-esteem. It gave me it cemented that I was right about myself as a kid. I am a performer. I see the world in a very, my own special way. I have a mind and a soul and a perspective. And maybe I should put that out there and connect with other people that might feel the same way. Because we're all on this ride together. Right? We're all carpooling. Some people are getting off at exit 13, others at exit 46, some at 117. But we're all carpooling together. Right? We're not born together with anybody. We're born separate and we die alone. But in the meantime, we're stuck together. Right? And I always felt like that as a kid. I felt like my voice was being silenced because I didn't have a place to put it. And stripping was a stepping stone. Because I became supremely confident, like, you know what, I'm not afraid to be in front of people. I'm less afraid to be in front of people in a freaking thong and boots, which looks ridiculous, by the way, than most people are clothed looking at me in an audience. Don't tell me that's not power.
Oh, incredible power. Incredible power.
And it gave me that.
Yeah.
And so when I attempted something bigger with higher stakes, which is a bigger industry, film and TV, I knew that I could go through the learning process the same way that you mentioned earlier. Fundamentally, it's all the same. The approach is all the same. I knew I could go to acting school, learn to act, make myself vulnerable, put myself in front of people, be judged for better or for worse, and I could be okay with it and walk away and still be me.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, because you've mentioned this a few times, but we haven't come to that, I do voiceover.
Yeah.
And what I do is romance and erotic audiobooks. It is stripping on the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get that, Josh? Like the correlation?
Yeah, yes, I do. I do, actually. No, I totally do.
It's just kind of amazing that you said that to me early on, because we don't know each other. For, listeners on this, we met 48 hours ago, you and I.
Yes.
Literally, right?
Yeah.
But you picked up on that. And it's for me, I have to tell you, thank you. It's so cool, man, because it's cool to be seen.
Yes.
It's cool that you notice this, because when I'm on the microphone, I often think, man, there's a ton of awesome narrators out there. There's a lot of cool guys in my industry who are much better narrators than me. They've been doing it a lot longer than me. They're more experienced. They have 4 to 10 times more credentials than I do. But I'm the only fucking person that when I talk on this microphone, I actually was just like the lead character in this story that these female authors are writing about, who are bad boys or badasses who have lived a life of debauchery, who have had a great time, right? Who have treated this world like it's a party, right? I've been there. So when I'm saying those words, as much as I'm using my imagination and creativity and my articulation and my enunciation, pronunciation, diction, clarity, pace, tonality, whatever, I actually know what I'm talking about. I'm not making it up.
No, you have
Right.
and
that's an interesting experience that I think, I know a lot of guys that I know of a lot of guys too in this industry, and they're cool guys. They're excellent narrators, right? But they're coming from a place of not having done that, and I'm coming from a place of like, oh yeah, it is like that, or no, it's not. So it's interesting when clients or authors write something, I go, that's not true. It's like, I can verify. I'm like, well, no, we don't do that.
I know somebody I have to introduce you to at some point. I think she'd get a kick out of you, and I think you get a kick out of her. So we'll have to do it. Yeah. So I'll tell you a fun little.
That statement is both scary and intriguing.
Yes. No. So I'll give you. It's like I do have a soft spot for the romantic writing industry. So when my podcast was.
Really?
Yeah. No, I do. So I'll tell you the story behind it. So about 3 years ago. No.
Are we jumping off? Are we, just to confirm, we're out of the stripping stuff, right?
Right, we're totally out of stripping stuff. We're totally out of stripping stuff.
Are we doing audiobooks now?
Yeah, whoa.
Audiobooks came a decade after filming.
No. It's okay. We again, we can go back and forth. This is like talk to the boss. So my podcast was started. I started.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
We can edit some of this.
Oh, totally.
I have to use the restroom.
Okay, fair enough. I'll tell you what. I'll put this on pause. Unpause this. Okay, so here's my story. My podcast was picking up traction, and I had done When Words Collide, which is a writing conference, and when I was on a panel with a woman by the name of M. Jane Collette, and she's a well-known romance writer. So the following year, I get this invite to actually do my podcast in her romantic writing festival. So I got to meet all of them in Alberta. Oh my God, the old so. It is nothing like having the older ladies turn you just beet red, which is all the things they're talking about, because it's just like it's hilarious. But to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, it's a seriously underserved. They don't get the respect they deserve, and I say that because it does take a lot of skill to make a fantasy of any kind, like any kind of fantasy or any kind of writing, feel authentic and real, and they do it just as well as any other genre out there. And they're disrespected because it talks about sex. Why is that a huge deal, really, in the grand scheme of things? And they're some of the sweetest, nicest...
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's like that?
I have a couple things...
I'll tell you why I ask you this question. I'm very interested in your perspective about how people view sexuality, because everyone has a different...
Okay, so I think the...
why are folks uncomfortable with it? Why do these folks get disrespected for that genre? Why is it not respected the same manner
I think there's
works in sci-fi?
I think there's two sides of it. So let's talk about the industry side of it. I think there's envy, right? I think there's envy because romance writers make a good living. A lot of them do. They make a good living. Most of them just write for a living, right? So if you're okay, I'm a sci-fi guy. My first book probably, now I'm not going to rule this out completely, probably isn't going to make me the money a romance book is, right? Now it might happen I hit the lottery and go boom, and next thing you know I'm getting calls from people I've never heard. But again, I have friends who've been writing romance for a long time. They're probably going to do better. The book sales are going to be better than mine. Now I could be upset about that, but why should, like, my personal opinion is why they've done a good job. I have to do a better job. Right? I think there's an envy there. Number one. Number two, I think on a personal level, for people at consumer level, I think we've been conditioned. I think the American audience is interesting because I think they've been conditioned that guns are okay but boobs are not, and I'm not sure why. I would rather boobs be okay than guns are not. But I think that's a cultural thing, specific to the bubble that is the United States of America. And I think, but number three, I do think, I had this in conversation, I was talking to the Naked Readers of Alberta about this. I think one of the things about the, I think one of the things that rightfully or wrongfully, when you look at, I don't mean to put this in the same category, but I do think they do have this in common. When you look at stripping, you look at porn, you look at all these things, there is a deliberate, dark, forbidden fantasy fruit, deliberately bias put into it. It doesn't need to be there. I honestly don't think. Like, look, we're all hornballs, and in our own way or another, we're all still like human beings. We don't need that. But much other forms of content, they find that if you put a negative connotation on something, it draws people more to it. So between that negative connotation, I think envy, right? Because honestly, it's not easy to do. I don't care what anyone tells you. If you can turn it, taking off a sock into something hot, and some of them can really do that, that takes skill. It really does. And it's not respected simply because just the connotation. I do think I'm kind of like this. I definitely can still blush like a schoolboy about some things, but I mean when you get right down to it, I think from a point of view of education, sex is sex when you get right down to it, but we don't have that attitude. We treat sex as this, like, either we undervalue it or we overvalue it. We just don't treat it for what it is, right? Which at its best is an incredible intimate experience. At its worst is a walk of shame in the morning. So right? And that's kind of how I see it. I think good romance, like, okay, I read science fiction and fantasy. Fantasy and romance aren't that different. They really, really aren't that different in terms of their love stories. Like, there's romance that has a huge connotation of love. Yeah, there's sex in it, but there's a big love overarching theme. Best fantasies have that love overconquers all theme in it. Some of the best ones do. It's not that big of a stretch, right? But the moment you put it into romance, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Like it's been cheapened or it doesn't.
Yeah. But it's not always.
There is this attitude that if it is, I mean, we'll talk about this pretty in depth probably because this is probably my favorite subject so far. There is an attitude that, yeah, if it's that these people aren't talented, that they're not good writers. Oh, they stay at home, they're self-taught, they have not built up their skill set. Anybody can do it. But one thing that you said that I keyed in on is, it's hard to finish anything.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a book, forget the genre.
Mm-hmm.
To sit down when you are not being paid or encouraged or it's mandated of you to write a book with 374 pages or whatever with no promise that number one, it'll be good, number two, that anybody will read it, and number three, that you'll ever make any money off of it. Man, that takes some inner fortitude.
Yeah.
It takes a will, right, doesn't it? So in minimum, my attitude is this. Anyone who finishes any book, regardless, that's something that no one can take away from you. I respect the fact that you started and you finished, because 98% of this world doesn't finish anything they start.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in that 3 percentile, you've at least passed that first tier, which is the most difficult one, because once you pass that first tier, you can improve.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn from your mistakes. Maybe you say, maybe your first book is shit, but you go, you know what? Wow, I realized what I wouldn't do again.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I'll do to make it better. On my next one, I'm going to try this, right? Because it's all an experiment anyways, right? But I agree with you. People don't respect it. Now, I have a 50-50 attitude about doing romance. I'm more practical about it. It isn't, I didn't get into it because of passion. I didn't get into it because it was my chosen preference. It was what I was going for. Like, my life, Josh, I feel like it's, I'm always on a serendipitous adventure.
Mm-hmm.
It's often felt like the thing I'm going for. I don't want to say I don't get what I want, because I get a lot of what I want,
mm-hmm.
but it's always in an unexpected way, or I get things that I didn't know I wanted. It kind of reminds me of, the universe doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you need. Does that make sense?
It does. I had a big revelation about 2 years ago about, ironically, this.
About what? Serendipitous adventures?
The serendipitous adventure. I had something in regards to that. But also, so before I fixed my teeth, I came to a very, very, very interesting conclusion about people in general. And something we mentioned actually at the beginning, and I think this is actually true, that given any circumstances, people do exactly what they want to do and the result is exactly what they want, whether they realize it or not, right? I think the roadmap, I think where most of us don't really clue in on this, is the roadmap to get there, right? We don't necessarily have the answer to what that roadmap actually is, right? So I would submit to you that, you know, maybe you didn't seek to get into being a voiceover actor or a voiceover reader for romance audiobooks. But I would stand the reason that you have the mental capacity, you have the fortitude to do it, you have enough respect for the material to give it your best, and it appeals to a certain aspect of your personality. Now, again, it might not be your biggest passion, but
It's an interesting. I'll tell you. I guess we should just go into how I got into it.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine, my buddy Bobby, who I've known, ironically, from stripping. He was a dancer.
Yeah.
He started doing audiobooks. We caught up years later after he had walked away from dancing. I had continued to do it for far more years after. He was doing audiobooks for about a year before I got into it. He told me, you know, you should try this. And I wasn't interested at all. In fact, I'll even, you know, I run the risk here of being too honest, but what the hell? I mean, it's the truth. We had gone to a SAG-AFTRA presentation at the offices here in Wilshire, Hollywood. SAG-AFTRA, for those that don't know, is they used to be two unions that were separate. SAG was the Screen Actors Guild. AFTRA was the American Federation of TV and Radio Artists. They merged back in like 2012, 2013. But they were independent for about 70 years. And SAG is every film you've ever seen, every Hollywood blockbuster, and AFTRA was about half the TV shows, including soap operas and reality TV. There was a panel on voiceover, and they had a little bit of everything. People who were talking about movie trailers, TV promos, animation, cartoons, right? Video games. And they're all different. They're all different. The way that you approach a commercial is different than the way you do a character for a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Just because someone's a voice actor doesn't mean they do that thing.
Mm-hmm.
A mechanic might specialize in European sports cars, right? Mercedes-Benz, BMW. Doesn't mean it works on Toyotas and Lexus, right? It's different. They're both mechanics, but they're niches, like you mentioned before.
Yes.
So my friend Bobby, we were at this thing, and there are all these people talking about different stuff. So we get to movie trailers. I'm looking at Bobby. This is great. They talk about TV promos for shows. Awesome. Animation. Awesome. Video games. Awesome. Audiobooks. I turned to him and I said, that's fucking boring. Well, when I say that the universe doesn't give you what you want, gives you what you need. Karma.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes.
Here I am in 2012, 2013, being a judgmental prick, let's be honest.
Yes.
Not liking something from the surface, right? Knowing very little about it, having never done it. And a few years later, he's like, hey man, I think you should do audiobooks. And I was still like, no. Because by this point, truth be told, I have read way more picture books, comic books, and screenplays, actual screenplays, than I have novels. So it's not my thing, quote unquote, it's not my thing. And then he says, you should try this. And I said, no. He goes, look, why don't you just audition for my agency? It's easy, it's 2 minutes. You take 2 different excerpts from stuff that my boss will send you. And I thought, well, I could do sci-fi or mystery thrillers or, stuff I like, right? Military stories, like Tom Clancy stuff. So that's the genre I like, right? I'm a guy. I'm a guy. I want sci-fi, I want fantasy, I want guns and, all this cool stuff that I'm a guy, And lo and behold, I get a response back from the agency I'm still with, the Silverton Audio. And the boss, Tim, says, hey, listen, it's good. You have a great voice, and it's clear. I'd love to have you on. But, you know, there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is your auditions were great, you know. Love to have you. Cool, okay. Bad news is, maybe to you, is I specifically see your voice as one thing in particular. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, historical dramas, you know. You know, cartoons, like, you know, e-learning, what can it be, you know? Romance and erotic. Now, you tell any guy that, right, that's not good news.
No.
Right? Like, that's not what I was going for. That's like trying to shoot an arrow at a target and you hit the fence behind you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
At when it's not going well, right? So,
okay.
But he said, and this connects to something you said earlier, he says, look, I think you'll be surprised. They have stories. It's not just hot and heavy scenes.
Yeah.
They have to have a story because they got to be about people going through some stuff and then they meet and fall in love, right? Come on, use common sense here. They are books. Don't be so quick to judge. And I was still kind of iffy, and then he goes, and they pay. So, romance and erotic stories are one of the top 2 or 3 biggest moneymakers. Yeah. Because just like horror in film, if you want to make a movie, and it's your first time out being a filmmaker, make a horror flick. Because regardless of how good or bad it is, how gory it is, how ridiculous it is, and how bad the story is, and all, people watch horror films most of the time, generally speaking, because they want to see evil and monsters and killing and horror and scares and all the things that go in that genre, right? And I mean, even horror has subgenres, right? You've got gore, you've got thrillers, you've got psychological thriller, you know, we're not going to get into that argument. Semantics. But he said that. He said it pays. And then I went, okay, I'm interested. So to be totally honest, it wasn't something I was seeking. It's something that, again, like China, like stripping, like doing this graphic novel with my partner, it seems like, Josh, every damn time I say no arrogantly, and I scoff at a friend or a colleague who is suggesting this insane idea that I would never do, damn it, that's exactly what I end up doing.
Yeah. No, so I've learned never say never.
Say the universe doesn't give you what you want.
No, but see.
Because it keeps happening, bro.
But that doesn't mean the universe doesn't have a sense of humor, my friend. That's the thing. The universe.
I don't know if the universe has a sense of humor, or I've built one out now because of the irony.
Oh no.
If I don't have a sense of humor, bro, I'm jumping.
No. See, I know that God has a sense of humor. I know it deep down in my soul. God has a sense of humor. The situations He has put me in, I'm like, really? And then sometimes you just look up, good one. It's like, what can you do? Like, you're here, right?
Right. Sometimes something happens to you, and you can't. There's no rebuttal.
No, it's done.
Okay.
Yeah, it's it.
It's kind of like when you admit something, you're up against a wall, and you just go, all right, there's no point to argue, there's no point to, it is what it is.
You gotta buy in. It's like you just buy into it now because you're there. Like, that's it. That's all. You only have one choice. You can buy in gracefully, or you can just buy in dragging your.
You can be in denial.
Yeah. Or you're still going in. That doesn't matter. You're going. You just how do you want to do this, right? Do you want to do it? Which end of you do you want up when you get there? That's the only question that's left at that point. Yeah.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah, it's true. It's what it comes down to, right? But that's why I never say never. I'm too scared to say never.
Josh, I gotta learn that from you, man.
Yeah.
I'm always saying never. I'm the king of no. And
no, there's a different. Okay. Before we move on to I want to go to China first before we go to your comic. But before we, I've learned this. Saying no is not necessarily an unhealthy thing. Saying no because you have too much on your plate is actually a great thing. Saying no, you'll never do it because you're above do it. That's when the world just likes to puts the boots to you, right?
I agree, and to add to that, to clarify, that's why I say no, because my biggest concern is I have a zillion ideas, and man, I could just pull myself in 17 different directions, and you know how that is when you do that.
Nothing happens.
You juggle too many balls and you drop a ball.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
My fear is always that, like, man, I like these people. Man, I like that opportunity. I want to participate.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, you know what? It's kind of like City Slickers, Jack Palance. You know what the secret to life is? Do one thing. There's a scene. Sorry. I'm just referring to this. In City Slickers, Jack Palance plays this guide for Billy Crystal and his friends. And he's telling Billy Crystal the secret to life, and then he dies. And he says, the secret to life is do one thing. So, keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Stephen Covey said this, and I hate bringing up self-help books and all the raw stuff, but there is something to it. Yeah, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And I say no because I might go off on that adventure, and I might get lost in that, and it might deviate and water down. So. Yeah.
Which is good. It sounds to me you also say no sometimes. Like, I'll never do it, and that's when you get your yeah. And that's when you get your.
I think, well, it kind of goes with the territory, man. If you're it goes with the ego.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do this. I'm a demigod.
So at that point, so when you do that next time.
Versus like, really? Bam! That's exactly what it's kind of like cheeseburger.
I will never flip burgers again. Dude, guess what you're doing? You're flipping those burgers, and you're going to do it with a smile.
I'm telling you now, don't be stupid. I am never going to do this. Even if you rip off my arms and my legs, and you cut off my head, and I cannot talk because my head is cut off. Although if you cut off my head, I probably would talk. Because I hate you. I will still say no to your face. So you're not going to do it? Let me think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, right?
Yeah. No. Like sometimes I don't really want to do it, but sometimes you just realize I have to do it, and so you have to change your mindset. Okay, what an opportunity this is. Like I said, and when I did this podcast, like every time I meet all kinds of interesting people, I could be, like honestly, it would be really easy for me to be a judgmental prick because I see everybody, right? I wouldn't have much of a show, though, would I? I could say, what an incredible opportunity.
You'd be wrong.
You'd be wrong. Oh, no, that too. No, absolutely. No,
You'd be wrong because as you get to know people.
Yeah.
There's this beautiful Buddhist saying, and I'm not Buddhist, by the way, but you take beauty where you find it on this earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you find it everywhere. And in Buddhism, there's a saying that where there is, it's either where there is understanding, there is no judgment, or there is no judgment where there is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I might be flipping it, but I'm paraphrasing.
But it's right. No, it's absolutely right. I chose when I did this is I would try to understand, like every guest. I think I've done a good job. I try to keep my mouth shut and I learn stuff about everybody. And as
you gain the insights, you can see.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, when you see something, you don't get it because you don't get it. Because you don't know.
No.
But once you get to meet people and they tell you their story, and
then suddenly, then suddenly I have this big answer. I have this big answer of, who am I really to judge anybody? At some point, you just come to that point. It's like, who am I to do it? I don't know. I don't know what's right or wrong or up and down anymore. And honestly, in the best way possible. There's so much magic out there. There's so many cool people doing so many amazing things. Why would I be so foolish? Right, to deny myself the opportunity to get to know so many different people on so many walks of life, right? I whether it's a heavy metal band talking about stone flies, whether it's you talking about a stripping career, whether it's a 17-year-old prodigy telling me how she stole everything, whether it's a New York Times best-selling author talking about making her dreams come true, it doesn't matter. I get to enjoy all of that. and all I have to do is be understanding. What a concept, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So
The audio, we'll just wrap up the audiobooks.
yeah.
I've been doing them for almost 5 years now. So anyways, like I said, my buddy got me into them and I just attacked it. I was just doing them. At first, anything and everything that came in, because it was so new and I didn't know. You know, it's a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
You're speaking, you know, to give you an idea. You're talking to yourself in a room for hours and hours and hours, with the occasional small break to drink water or go to the bathroom. And your brain and your eyes and your mouth are reading copy off a tablet or a PC. And not only are you trying to articulate the grammar that's been put down, but you're hopefully trying to express emotion and clarity, or what your comprehension of what's happening in the story and what the characters are saying are, you know. And it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, unless you're fortunate enough to be in a studio with an engineer and some other folks, you know, directing, you're self-directing. So there's a line, you know, and that line is, give me a line, give me a sentence. Let's try, let's get an insight into how, give me any sentence. Don't worry if it's good or bad, literally any sentence.
Oh boy. A unicorn fall.
You see how hard that is? You see how I just gave you a choice?
You know, I know.
And so, by the way, wait. No, I'm not judging you. I'm saying I'm glad that you had that moment, because you went, oh boy, because you're thinking about it, how you would do that. And we run into that every, you know, couple of seconds, like, how would I say this line?
So I don't know
if you... What do they mean by this? What am I comprehending here?
So...
Which is different than interpretation, right? Because interpretation is what you put into it, but you want to read out from the text.
So...
Yeah, that's a different skill.
I'm gonna throw something at you just real quick, because I've been doing my own audiobook on my podcast every weekend. Just about. Well, last weekend was the exception. I actually let romance writers come and read their stuff on my podcast for a half hour, which was a fun little. Yeah, right. But one of the things I learned very early on is the other thing that makes audio so hard. Books aren't meant to be heard. A lot of them are meant to be read. So, and what I mean by that is like it's just the way the words are constructed. So what my struggle with my own book was okay, how can I use sound as a vehicle to tell a story? Because no matter what you do, even if you have the exact same words, it cannot be the same story that you're reading. There's just no way you can do that. But you can do it, but sound can add a layer to a story that did not exist prior to that thing. And that's what a voiceover like audio, that's what they do. They add another layer to it, and if they do it really well, like I again, not to talk about radio dramas for a second, but I love the Shadow. I love the old school like Shadow and things like that. The
Shadow radio show?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that.
I haven't heard somebody mention that in over 2 decades. That's pretty cool, because I've heard a few and I dig them, but I have not.
Yeah, I did no, but
binged on them. Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, when I'm looking at my stuff, I want to get to the point where I'm good enough where I'm good with my own stuff. It's a merger between what a typical audiobook does and something along those radio shows. Because I think we're just starting to tap into what's possible with that edition. It's just my opinion, but it's...
Well, there is a big push, and there has been for a while, and I'm not going to talk about the business too much, because the business is still kind of in many ways the Wild West.
Yes.
Audiobooks they're not new. I mean, Audible is the big boys, and they've been around for nearly 2 decades. And then I think they may have started independently, and Amazon bought them somewhere down the road.
Yes.
Audiobooks, you know, in their first decade were still pretty unrefined.
Yeah.
You know, and back in the 80s, if you're talking about books on tape, which was probably the height of audiobooks before all of this with ACX and iTunes, Audible, Amazon, Blackstone Audio. that was the pinnacle. You know, that would have been the golden age of audiobooks, similar to the WWF, not WWE, with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Superfly, Ultimate Warrior and all that. That is a decade that is before The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker Kane, you know, Mankind, all that. So you get that first wave and that second wave. And audiobooks is the same way, where in the 80s, it was books on tape. And unless a book was very good, it would not go to books on tape because it was expensive. And now what's amazing, and this is always good and bad with the advent of technology, right? The good news always with technology is anyone can do it. The bad thing about technology is anyone can do it.
Yeah.
right. I know you'd appreciate that.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. And the thing is, the beauty is that there were people who seemingly may have not been able to get into this before that now at least can take a shot and try it out. And I mean, and this isn't some agenda, but it's going in this direction, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a kind of a collective feeling that, hey, let's put everything ever written on audio. Because people are busy. You know, you're driving to work, and you can't read a book as you're steering, right? Or you're on the subway, maybe you want to close your eyes because your eyes hurt. You just got off a 12-hour shift from work, but you want to tune out while tuning in. So you put in your AirPods, you know, and you're listening to a story that takes you away. Escapism. You know, there is a goal to put almost every single book on audio because some people take information in that way. You know, reading is a certain skill set, right? Watching a film or a TV show is obviously visual, and some of it is oral. You know, I want to hear these things. And especially with the romance and erotic novel genre, women, you know, there's that cliche that men like what they see, women love what they hear. But I think everybody likes what they hear if it's good.
Oh, it's true. It's true.
So I know I do, right? So there is this, it's pushing in that direction, you know, where eventually everything is going to be put on audio, including the Bible. You know what I mean? Like, everything's going to be put on audio. And it's still amazing because when you consider the sheer number of books that exist, the vastness of how many books exist, there still is not. With everybody staying home right now, and with a microphone that worst case scenario, you can buy an Audio Technica 2020 or whatever mic, $150, a Blue Yeti, whatever. Patch it in via USB to your existing computer and download Audacity for free. That's a small investment. You can start trying.
Yeah.
And with all this technology, and with everything being online, and with it gaining momentum going forward, still there are not enough narrators.
Yeah.
And like any industry, you've got a certain number of people doing it, and then you've got that 3 to 5%, the upper crust, you know, who are the best, who are the most experienced, who are the ones who are the greatest storytellers and communicators who can convey these symbols on a page into a breathing, living thing.
Yes.
And it is a skill, and it is hard, and it's unique to anything else. It's different than standing in front of a camera, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's different than sculpting and painting. These are all forms of self-expression, but it's its own thing. And it's not slowing down, man. And with this going on right now, my God, there's been a major uptick. You know?
Yeah.
I got residuals this month, and they went up a bit.
That's good. That's a good thing.
People are at home. You know, people are home, and or people are not doing anything as much, or they're not going to work as much, or whatever, and you know, they're investing that time in whatever it is that they do. And got downtime. So,
which is really
audiobooks for me, I didn't want to get into them. I definitely was not going for romance and erotic novels. And there are a lot of male narrators that I admire who I think are more seasoned than I am. Because they are. They're older. They've done a lot more work. I appreciate what they do. like it. I like their work, is what it is. You know, I can hear something and go, I'm a fan of that. That's good. You know? But it's cool because everybody has a different thing.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. And for me, when I'm reading the scenes, I don't feel uncomfortable. I think there is there's maybe one advantage I have that trickled down from stripping, and that is that I notice when I listen to people on bad words or sections that are very heated or passionate.
Yes.
There is this listening that I do that is very, 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 I'm being attentive. And I notice that for most people, there is a bit of how do I explain this? Because it's so hard to explain. It's hard to prove it unless you know what I know.
Okay.
When I listen to folks talk and say bad words, I'll say this. What I think I have an advantage on is when I say the word fuck. Or something a bit more naughty.
Yes.
Right? I enjoy it much more than most people. And I probably feel more comfortable than most people, and I feel most connected to things that go with it. Like if there's a scene going on and a particular character is doing this or that or grabbing this or that or whatever, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty fun. I've done that, or I've tried that, or I like doing that, or that's one of my fetishes, or that's, where I think if you have not ventured into the foray of sexuality as much, if let's say you've, and it's not a judgment, it's an observation,
Yeah.
just saying that if your life has been more or less normal and you didn't do, something like stripping or porn that is more in that direction, you're not going to be as well versed in something when you get to something that may be a bit more uncomfortable. You might do a decent job. It might be read well. It might be, it might be very academic. It might be very intellectual. There might be no mispronunciations. It might be very, very, it passed the eye test. But I'm like, oh, that person has a bit of guilt when they say that word because they come from a Christian background. So you can't say that. You can't say that to somebody because they'll say, no, come on. There's no proof of that. You're making that up. And I'm like, dude, look, I'm not looking for this number one. I'm not trying to hear this number two. But let's be honest. If your whole life you worked in an office, and I used to take my clothes off for a living for 15 years, chances are I'm a bit more comfortable doing and saying certain shit over you. Right?
Actually, so I was going to add... Damn, this phone. Anyways, what I was going to add to
I like
it...
the phone. It adds an element of reality.
Yes, it does. It
I'm
does.
just throwing that back at you.
No, it's true. It's like, goddamn...
Now you said damn the phone. See?
Yeah.
I caught you.
You did.
I like it
But,
because it sounds real, and I'm like, well,
no,
we don't want the phone interruption.
yeah, but well, especially when it's good. When it's good, you hate the interruption. But
You should answer it. You should answer it with a grandma's voice.
no, it's my just.
Hello? I'm sorry, I'm doing an interview right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
I lived through polio in the Second World War. Do you people have any manners?
Nope.
It's a Saturday for crying out loud. You should do that.
Yeah, I should totally do that. Maybe the next person. But what I was gonna say is, see, I don't have I'm not gonna say I'm embarrassment proof because it is possible. I will admit this, but it's very hard to embarrass me, right? Because I've been through almost every kind of possible embarrassing situation. I've been through it. So when it comes to those awkward moments in life, it's like this doesn't rattle me anymore because I've been there. I know what this is like. I can buy in. And for you, right? For you, it's easy for you to buy in because it's not outside your wheelhouse at all. You've done it.
Because you don't have to buy in because you were already a damn member.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah.
No one has to convince you of what you already inherently.
Yeah. So you're not uncomfortable with it because here's the thing: people can hear discomfort. That's what you're hearing when you hear that voice guy, right? Yeah. People can hear it. If they may not be.
Because I want to clarify that.
Yeah.
It's not me saying. It's definitely not me saying this. Oh, this narrator is terrible.
No.
No, it's not that. It's more like, oh, wait a minute. what is that? And then repeatedly over time going, hey, I'm starting to notice a pattern here. What is this?
Yeah.
Is it when this person says this, they kind of slightly,
because what's
a fraction of a second, like
there's a hesitation.
That word, they're trying to get through that word faster. They're trying to get to the next thing,
because
get off of. You remember reading in school? You didn't want to read, so you read a lot.
Yeah.
Done, so you can sit down.
Yeah. So
it's almost on a microcosm level.
It's what happens is you probably have an excellent narrator being put outside their comfort zone. Because what happens is it's.
But wait a minute. But they've been doing it longer.
Genres. But I mean, like I said, there is something about having to buy into, there's got to be a buy-in to what you're doing, a full buy-in to get the absolute best result. And the thing is, I know this just from how they got me blushing. Some of those writers have incredible imaginations in regards to those positions, and some have incredible experience in those positions. And you're right. So you come across those things, and you're like, okay, maybe I need to do a retake, right? You have to. I think what happens with those, and it's not, and again, everybody has their own experiences with it. The fact that you're like, you might have a moment, I'm sure there's been a couple of them even you've read, you're like, holy shit. But I mean, even so,
I haven't.
No, really?
I haven't.
Really?
I haven't.
Wow.
And I want to say this, it's not because, and I don't.
Just Joshing is sponsored by Wall of Wishes by Susie Vidori. Wall of Wishes is the conclusion of the Aurora-nominated trilogy by Susie. Ada and Courtney are forced to join forces as the school and the fountain are in danger of going away forever. And if the fountain is destroyed, what will that do to Ada and Courtney? Wall of Wishes is available now at Owl's Nest Books. Click on the link in the description below to place your order. And that was part 2 of my conversation with Marcio Catalano. Part 3 will be up Saturday. As is, there's no story time this week. This interview is just so big and so ginormous. Like I said, lots of it's on the cutting room floor too. Part 3 will be the conclusion. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you guys got an insight on a world you never imagined. I know I did after listening to this one, so I'm just going to go right to the end credits here. There's not much more to say. So thanks everybody for listening to this episode. Just Joshing. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. Subscribe to the podcast. I'm on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. You can find me in any of those locations. I have my book Cloud Divers available now on Amazon. My next book, Alicera, will be out July 23rd. Outside of that, YouTube channel is Joshua Penteloresco. You want to see the previous episodes of my show there. There will be 321 as of this recording up there. Outside of that, Twitter and Instagram's J Penteloresco. My merchandise link is below. So is my newsletter link. If you want to subscribe, you can do so there. Stay inspired. Stay true to yourselves. Let the rest take care of itself.
Josh.